Okay.
There you go.
Hi, Stephen.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
It's the end of Friday. It's been a miserably painful day.
I'm here with Stephen Chung. I'm Michele Grace Hottel of Michele Grace Hottel Architect. I've never met a woman architect before podcast with Michele Grace Hottel, and I'm Michele Grace Hottel. I'm here with Stephen K. Chung, AIA. He's a registered architect and founder in Florida and Massachusetts, and principal of Stephen Chung Architect. His Boston-based studio is focused on residential and hospitality projects. Stephen received his architecture degree from Harvard. His recent projects include a new 89-room boutique hotel called the Sarasota Modern, 3 new houses in Sarasota, and a townhouse development and residential building, both in Boston. In 2020 to 2024, Stephen won a Best of House award for his residential design work. In March 2009, Casas International published a monograph on his residential work. The book features 11 of his residential projects. In addition to practice, Stephen has taught architectural design at several institutions, including Cornell, Rhode Island School of Design, the University of Texas at Austin, and Yale University. Currently, he is an adjunct professor of interior architecture at Suffolk University. Stephen is committed to bridging the gap between the architecture profession and the general public. To this end, Stephen was the creator, executive producer, and host of the acclaimed public television series called Cool Spaces, The Best New Architecture. Season 1 of this landmark series debuted on PBS in 2014. Stephen also hosted a podcast show called Design Your Dream Home with architect Doug Patt. The podcast provided advice to those wanting to design their dream home, and I was a guest on that podcast.
You were a guest on that podcast.
Yes,
Thank you
so
for doing that.
thank you so much. And I had reached out to Stephen because I was like, a lot of people will say, "Oh, Michele, why don't you do a TV show?" Right? And so I was kind of like, "Oh, I don't know about a TV show," and so I asked Stephen, hold on a second, I have to get the plug in. I said to Stephen, I'm like, hey, like how exactly is it to have a TV show? And then he kind of gave me kind of the lowdown on that. And just some very interesting advice about the whole process. And do you want to elaborate that and kind of elaborate on, I thought that it was a great idea.
I mean, it's a different time. I mean, this is a project that was hatched in my mind in like 2007, 2008. I mean, it was a long time ago when legacy media like public television, and I mean these were potential options. You had Travel Channel, you had a lot of the sort of HGTV. There was a lot of different programs out there, and I thought that there was an opportunity to do something. Again, there's so many different types of shows on cable that I thought we could maybe, if we could figure out the right formula, uh, have a show about architecture. So it was a very hard sell without making it about death and destruction and or drama, and it's very hard. It's a very hard formula, that which I learned. And then you have to then also figure that there's an equation that has to work, which has to do with low cost of production for maximum kind of sales and viewership. That's a really ideal scenario. So lots of these dating shows on TV these days that you see, where they don't necessarily have to pay the people that are on those shows, that they can have them cast in a one house, and that can go on and on and on. That's perfect. That's a great formula, where I say that I'm going
Oh
to
my
travel all
God.
across the country
Yeah,
and
yeah.
look at great buildings. It takes time. It's the travel. It's a much more challenging kind of scenario. So that's why we went to public television. It was the only kind of place where we thought we could make a go of it. So, I mean,
Mhm.
it worked for a little while, but I think that, since then, I think that all these other media, digital, YouTube, Instagram, whatever it is, it's just kind of
Mhm.
overrun and overtaken this legacy media. I mean, look at public television right now. It's really kind of floundering, and with this administration,
Yeah.
I don't really
Yes,
know what's
exactly.
going to happen. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
other
Yeah. Well,
countries still
look at,
really
like
support public
KCRW,
television.
right? KCRW laid off like, I don't know, 10% of their staff. Or
Yeah,
like
it's
right.
gonna be more than that. It's gonna be more
Yeah,
than that,
it's gonna be more than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So
who did you
yeah,
have?
it's impossible. So that's why I stopped, and it was fun to do, but that was a sort of chapter, and that's past now.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's why when you asked me about it, I said I don't think it's a good idea. You shouldn't do it. I just don't think that I think it's too hard. It was just too hard. Not to mention they're pretty hard on the talent. The talent, meaning you know, have you been trained? If you're a model, that would be good. If there's a lot of things that they're looking for in order for it. If you're a celebrity, that would be even better.
Oh yeah,
That
yeah.
kind of
No, I know
thing.
that. Yeah, yeah. I know on Architectural Digest, I had talked to one of the people that I worked for, and he had several projects in Architectural Digest, but he said, oh yeah, now they don't. It's like they don't even want you unless there's a celebrity that you've done a home for,
Hmm.
and then that's what they want in order to like sell all this stuff, and I did this past week I went to a week ago I went to Modernism Week, the kind of the October version of Modernism Week in Palm Springs, and we
Hmm.
went on a tour that was actually led by the retired executive director for Architectural Digest, and he and I were kind of like just talking about stuff, and he had led his own little tour because he bought kind of like these detached houses that were designed by Laszlo, I forget. It was supposed to be the inspiration for the brutalists, but he wasn't actually like that. And these homes that we went through definitely also were not, we're not like they're not like super brutalist. They're kind of and they're from like the late 70s, like kind of mid to late 70s there, but they're very nice to touch, and everybody has kind of like made different changes to them. Maybe they added some windows and things that were different, but he was kind of saying the same thing, like, yeah, it's like you got to be a celebrity now to be in the magazine, and this was
Hmm.
back in like the Paige Ren's days where she like it kind of wasn't like that. But um uh could you elaborate on, I mean, some of the guests that you had on your team? Because you had Frank Gehry.
Hmm.
Gary was one of the people. I saw that episode. And then who else did you have?
I mean, so
So,
even with PBS, they said you need to get names. And
mhm.
so here's a kind of unknown producer reaching out to Frank Gehry to ask him if he'd be part of our show, reaching out to Jerry Jones, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, so ask if we could go visit his building. And to my surprise, that when the first one says yes, and then we say, we go to the third architect, and I say, who's agreed to be a part of the show? Well, Frank Gehry is going to be on first episode, and we also have Jerry Jones, the Dallas Cowboys. Oh, really? And then it sort of works like that. So it really did kind of that sort of worked, I thought.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, no, I mean, this is kind of part of the game, and a lot of architects are very critical of some of the building choices, but there's a lot of different kind of asks, a lot of things. It's better if they're known, they're notable guests or architects or clients or
Hmm. Hmm.
whatever it is, and that's just part of the equation. And I mean, I kind of rationalize that, I'm gonna hopefully if this works, then we can really maybe if there's 3 buildings per episode, 2 of the buildings are very famous architects or clients or whatever, and maybe the third one is someone lesser known, but maybe the building is more interesting. But nevertheless, we can kind of we could introduce that, and I think people, as long as they have the other big names, it's okay. Something like that. That was the kind of
No,
thought
no,
process.
exactly. Exactly.
So
Yeah. And I think that that's what they should do, with like, with different organizations. I mean, they should definitely, right? Like when I'm on a committee or something, I always make sure that there are other women that are going to be speaking, or that, if I'm organizing something, they're right, that there are women that
yeah.
are going to be speaking, or that we're following, the equity by design kind of guidelines with things. And, I mean, I think that's important. I think it's important for the profession. Um, and but I mean, it's funny because I interviewed one person, and I mean, he's kind of a big name, and the thing is that he's just a great person. I mean, it's like he is hands down like one of the greatest architects that I've met, and just like so down to earth, and like very
Who's
kind of
that?
help. Tom Kundig.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've interviewed him also. He's a, yeah, very good
Yes,
architect,
yes.
very nice guy.
Yeah, he is. And
Yeah,
like very, very nice, and like,
very
yeah,
talented.
and yeah, very talented. And I mean, I think he's very talented. But somebody said, like, I don't want to be after Tom Kundig. Like, you're not going to
No.
make me go after Tom Kundig, Michelle, are you? And I'm like, oh my gosh, somebody has to be after Tom Kundig. We have like how many, like I interviewed him like almost 2 years ago now. It's like there's gotta be so yeah, yeah.
My younger son, he plays baseball. He's a high school. He's a pretty good player, and he trains at a facility that the owner is the trainer for the Yankees. So it's a
Oh,
kind of a well-known facility here in the Northeast. And he has a podcast, and he can get any guest he wants. So he has all these major league players, and they talk about like what it was like growing up, and oh, I was the best and
yeah.
everywhere. I got all these scholarships. I was the best. And I find those podcasts actually not that interesting. The ones that are interesting are the guy that I was really small. I had difficulty. I had troubles. And I kept on persevering. And now I've sort of made it to maybe just college. He didn't make it all the way to the pros, but I find that you can identify more with that. I can identify more with someone who's not been blessed with every advantage. My father was a professional player. I'm 6'7". I'm 280, 60 pounds. I'm an Adonis. And so, yeah, you made it to the league. That's great. I mean, it's not that interesting. What's more interesting is I was only 5'7", and
The
I really wanted to
underdog,
play.
the
Maybe it's
underdog
the underdog.
story. Yeah, I think it
And
is.
so I'm sure the same goes with probably your guests. I mean, maybe Tom Kundig is fantastic, but maybe someone else has a different story to tell that could be is just as interesting or maybe more compelling to your readers. I mean, or
Oh
to your
yeah,
listeners.
exactly. Yeah, because I mean, I have people that are well known, and then I have people that are not so well known. And I mean, I think that that's and I don't even some people will be like, oh, I've listened to your podcast, and I'm like, really? I'm like, I didn't even know that like there were that many people. I mean, I can see that people are listening to it, but it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm like recognized or something. But because I don't apply for anything. I don't apply for any design awards. I
Me
don't
neither.
apply for any of that stuff, right?
Me neither. I don't care about it anymore. By the way,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not in the AIA anymore because I didn't pay my dues. So you should probably I'll get in trouble. But the guy that was there, that was the president, is no longer there. So maybe they won't be mad at me. Um, so Michelle, you know what? I have a couple of friends now that have become like chairs and leaders of schools. One of them's at the University of Chicago, Illinois. Is it Champaign? What anyway? And
Oh yeah, Urbana Champaign,
yeah,
right? Urbana
he
Champaign.
published
Yeah.
a picture of him like in a studio. And I know they named your podcast, or I never met a woman
What?
or what architect, right? That entire class was women. There was like 18 women and 2 men. Right now, architecture
Oh,
schools
oh.
are completely filled with women. It's women by like
No, I know. No,
yes,
no, no.
it's like
I
three to
know
one.
people. I know people say, yeah,
Okay.
I know
So
people
what are you
say
gonna do
that. But
now?
but
So
that's like not. And yeah. And I mean, I know I've had like people like I asked like I asked Patrick Ty, who I've known like since we were like 20,
yeah, he's a
22,
he's a good
21.
architect too. Yeah, I like his work too. Yeah.
No, he's an architect. I actually, when I met him and went to school, he was not an architect. He was a fine arts major.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So he hadn't even that was like the first time that he'd ever been around architecture was that semester abroad. I mean, he maybe had like some classes or something, but he was a fine arts major. Yeah, but I said like, oh, do you want to be on my podcast? This is like, I don't know, a couple of years ago when I like saw him at Angie and Larry's Gold Award event, and he goes, oh, well, he's like, oh, well, I'm not a woman. And I'm like, yeah, Patrick, I know you're not a woman. But now when people say that, I know that they've never listened to the podcast before, but of course, because it's like 50-50 I do, typically. Um, and yeah, but the thing is, Stephen, what I have to, people bring this up like, oh yeah, there's all these women in school. Okay. Yeah. One, that's right. But if you go through the Equity by Design by Rosa Chang, you will see that there are these pinch points in women's careers. once they graduate school, maybe they never get a job doing architecture, and then maybe they get married, maybe they have a kid, maybe they don't go back to the profession after they have a kid, then if they do go back to the profession, they feel like they're behind,
Hmm.
and so they're put in like some position, right, they're like behind all these other people that were ahead of them before, which one of my friends said to me, one of the main reasons, and I mean, obviously she's fiercely competitive, but one of the main reasons why she did not take more time after she had her child, more time off because she said that it would kill her to go back and see somebody that was behind her in front of her then. Now, I mean, that's a competitive person. I mean, like I don't have it. And I never worked at firms that were that large where there was like a competitive atmosphere like that. I never worked at these big firms. Like I worked at like smaller firms where I got a lot of hands-on experience about every phase. And so that I could start my practice like after I had my child when it wasn't, feasible. And I mean, right, this is like 1994. It's like you weren't getting paid enough. And we were in LA, and so we did not have the money to really pay, it's like I wasn't getting paid that much money. And so all of my money all of my salary would have gone to childcare unless I started my own practice and started charging more,
Hmm.
and then I could spend time with my kid and I could work because I was, it's like I was making more money and it made
Right.
more financial sense to me,
Right.
and then I could like, I wasn't working for somebody that was telling me like, oh yeah, you have to work these hours, you have to do this, and then I was consulting with other architects that had also, that also had houses, working out of their house. And so, I would go over there, with my baby and everything is fine, so yeah, because I didn't have anybody watch, like my ex-mother-in-law like watched my daughter like one day a week. And that was like a nightmare. I mean, she was there, but it was not something like very unreliable. And, it's like I just didn't like the dynamics of the situation. But, I mean, she got a chance to spend with her granddaughter, and that's fine, right? That's the whole point. Um, I don't know how helpful it was for me. But so what are your first recollections of experiencing architecture?
Good transition, Michelle. You really care about my first recollections of?
What are your first recollections of experiencing architecture? Unless you wanted me to get into more of like women in the workplace and
No,
like kind of that whole thing.
your
Yeah.
podcast. You can go wherever you want. I mean, I'm used to. I've been in the habit of kind of being the interviewee, but whether it's TV or the podcast, or I don't know, I feel like when I'm a teacher, I kind of feel like I'm interviewing in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people don't really ask me these questions. I made a mistake. When I was younger, I play sports. I played baseball, and I like to go skiing, and so I would draw, in sixth grade, seventh grade, I would draw little stadiums of baseball parks and
Uh-huh.
imagine how
Uh-huh.
you could adjust the outfields to have different kinds of, I don't know, dimensions and distances, and
Uh-huh.
then I was at ski resorts. I would, driving to the ski resort, I would draw like mountains and I would carve out paths and imagine how you could create these different experiences. So later, I of course learned that none of these things have to do with architecture at all. So they don't, that's not designed by an architect. But there is something about drawing something, visualizing an experience, and then finding a way to sort of translate that into something real that others can experience. So I think that's all probably connected to probably the interest in architecture. So
Yeah.
growing up, then someone saying, I think you want to be an architect. That's what it sounds what you're interested in." So I was pretty young when I was carrying around the Richard Myers white book. He's an architect that I really liked and admired. When
Uh-huh.
I think I was 15 years old.
Uh-huh.
I knew all of his houses when I was pretty young. So when I took
Yeah.
architectural drafting
Yeah.
in my high school, mechanical
Yeah.
drawing, I was drawing like,
The Smith House or
cubist,
something.
Smith House,
Yeah.
cubist,
Yeah.
and the shop
Yeah.
teacher was kind of perplexed and wondering, what I was doing and, what I was looking at. But, and
We
probably
had
you
to
remember
do the
too, growing
Smith
up when you,
House.
Smith
Yeah, we
House,
had to do
Douglas
the
House.
Smith House
Yeah, yeah.
for our construction documents. In third year, we had a construction documents class, and
Yeah.
everybody had to do, everybody had to do the Smith house, which I was like, okay, it'd probably be more interesting if we like weren't all doing the same house.
Right.
But that's what we did. That was kind of like our first set of like working drawings was the Smith house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was looking at that when I was, again, 15, 16 years old. I was sort of studying that
Uh-huh.
house. So I was really into it, let's say. And you know, that for you, like probably like me, my parents used to get the New York Times and the magazine. At the back of the magazine, they had a real estate section, so you could see these beautiful modern houses, and they were always on Long Island, and they were designed by Gwathmey Siegel and Richard Meyer and all the New York Five.
Yeah.
And so I said,
Yeah.
these are houses. Like I grew up in a suburb where every house looked the same and had pitched roofs, and you know, were copies of historic styles, and this is suddenly so fresh and so different. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of like I want to do that, whatever that is. And yeah, so it was pretty like it was ordained. Like I was, that's the path I was going to take. And you
Mhm.
know, as a Korean father, as a doctor, he was pretty upset. But after I, you know, was gone that path, he said, "Oh, well, luckily I have a second son, so we'll work on him." But yeah, no, it was always going to be that way. And now, as my brother lives in the couple of towns over in the really rich town and has this really nice big house, I kind of wonder if I had
Oh
made a
my
mistake.
gosh.
Anyway, and he's a doctor, so
What kind of doctor is he?
is that a sad story for you?
No, no,
Okay.
you know what? You know what? No, it's well, because out of I mean, there were five of us. There were five of us, and now there's like four of us between like the step siblings and me. And I'm probably, unfortunately, I'm one of the more successful ones. But my I also have a stepbrother that I think that my stepdad thinks that he's kind of, he makes more money, right?
Hmm.
So he'll like say, well, he's done quite well for himself. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, considering that, yeah, yeah, he's like, he's done, I mean, yeah, he's not, he also has like less children. He only has one child,
Is he an architect?
No,
No. Okay. So,
no. He works for HD Supply.
okay.
But he's like the regional, like he has like all of the Southwest or something. He has like a
Hmm.
huge
He's a
area for
salesperson.
HD Supply. He's a sales,
Okay.
like sales manager for all of this. Yeah, and he lives in Texas, and so he's got a big barn dominium, and he has all of these, like little hobbies, right? He's got like, he like restores like old cars and makes them into this thing. He was on the front of like Barn Dominium magazine or whatever with it, or like one of these magazines. Yeah, he's always on the cover of like some magazine.
I mean, I think you would agree with me when, if some, like a student or somebody asks, you know, if they want to, that they want to study architecture. And I said, "Do you really love this?" And they said, "Well, yeah, I think I like it." And I say that you probably shouldn't do it then, because for the amount of effort, no, I know you're laughing, but this is true. This is what I tell them. For the amount of effort that it takes to live just a reasonable life, um, it's unless you really love the subject, if you don't like traveling and getting excited about going to a new place and walking through buildings and and exploring things like that. If you don't enjoy that, if you don't enjoy the process of drawing something and then seeing it realized and just that entire process, if you don't love that, then you shouldn't do it. It's just not worth it. It's too difficult. There's too many people out there that really do love it, that are willing to really do whatever it takes in a way to, in terms of time spent and all of that, to I mean, not
Yeah, they're
everybody in
not
the big
looking at it
office
as
gets to design the
business. Yeah,
building.
yeah.
There's yeah,
They're
so
they're not looking at it from a business point of view. And I mean, I can remember like I was renting some office space in Venice Beach, and I had my daughter. I don't know whether I was pregnant with my second or not at the point. But anyway, I was like renting office space, and I had a person that, I had been with a couple different people there in the space or whatever, but the one, they were working at an office full time, and then they just had this like for any of their side work, right? And I can remember one night, it was like, I don't know, it was like probably 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I'm like, okay, I'm leaving. And then they were like, oh, are you leaving already? And I'm like, well, yeah, because I'm paying a babysitter. And I said, and I think I said, these clients are not paying me enough to sit there and, you know, perseverate over their design to design them the greatest place in the world. And I said, no, it's like my time with my daughter is more important. And, that's what I'm going to do, and I left. so, so I mean, I think that, it kind of depends. Like if you're, to me, relationships in my life are more important than architecture. Above all. Of course, it's like, do I really like architecture? Yeah, I wouldn't say love it because, I think I think love, I think the word love is just saved for people. That's what what I
Okay, fair
think.
enough.
That's like that's my
How about
thing.
a passion? If you don't have a real passion for the subject, then like
Yeah,
my
yeah.
brother, he's ER doctor. I don't think
Oh my
he's got a
gosh.
passion for it. I don't think he has a passion for it. I think
Yes.
it's a noble profession. I think he comes home and he feels like he's done a lot of positive things.
Hmm.
But I think if it paid like much less, I don't think he would do it. I don't think so. I think it's really a lot of different factors that lead one to make those kind of decisions. But like for architecture, unfortunately, unless you're one of the very select few, that the financial part of it is just really going to be challenging. It's just never
Yeah.
again for let's say three people we're all in the same similar education and effort. One goes to law school, one goes to medical school, one goes to architecture school. Then in 20 years, I'm begging them to maybe let them design an addition to their big house. It's that kind of thing. That's just the
Yeah.
reality of it. So, and
Yeah.
I will say that I did consider and think about like some of my classmates and colleagues that some of them are, really well known, right?
Uh-huh.
Have gone on to become incredibly successful. The ones that are very successful, a lot of them, I would say all of them are pretty ruthless, like on their staff.
Yeah.
You work
Yeah.
weekends.
No, it's
I
true.
don't pay
Yeah.
interns. That's just the way it's going to be. I don't
Yeah.
care about like, your personal life. This is the way it is here. If you want to be here, there is
Hmm.
a ruthlessness to all of them that I realize I don't have that. Like, there's something missing. Like, I don't know if it's good, bad, but there's something like a kind of maybe just a incredible intensity and focus. And then again, I keep saying ruthless because I think that there's a lot of stuff that I know about that it's pretty tough. Like you said about your example of wanting to go home early. Well, some of these people would say, no, you're not going home, or if you want to be here in this office, you'll work
Yeah,
Saturday, Sunday.
if I was at somebody else's office, but you know what? I already did that time, right?
Right,
It was like
right.
when Jonathan Siegel and I, were talking, it's like, no, yeah, he goes, you don't do it now. He goes, because you already did it. And I said, well, also, it's like, I'm probably not going to do it for somebody else rather than if I'm going to put 60 hours in, it's going to be for my own firm. It's not going to be for somebody else's firm, right? They're
Hmm.
not going to use me. They're not going to pay me this much money. And then, the reason why I would do that is because of the projects that would get. If there was a project that was like great and that office is great, there are offices that I've gone into and I'm like, God, I would love, it's like I would love to be in this environment. I would love to do it, but would I want to be there like day after day? Probably not.
Hmm.
It's like I don't, and the whole reason why I don't have people working for me, it's like I'll have a consultant for maybe a certain project or whatever, but it's because I I don't want to use somebody, it's like I want them to, it's like I would want to give them benefits. If they were working full time, I would want to give them benefits. That's what they deserve. Like, that's what you should be thinking. And then that is going to raise the profession up instead of being this thing where, because I was in LA with, and, I talked to some of my friends and they're laughing. They're saying, like, wow, you were paid. That's
Hmm.
they're like, wow, you were in an office was paid. And I said, yeah, but you know what? I was a consultant at most everybody's offices except for uh um, Mark Appleton and Ralph Metzger's office. All the rest of them, just a consultant. And it was, I was still like working there, full time working in the office. But besides, Mark Appleton, they were, they actually had me even though I was at that office for like, around a year, maybe, because I was kind of fill in for a lot of work that they had at the time. But And then my late ex-husband was there, full time. He had worked there for a while, so that's kind of how they knew me and stuff. But but yeah, I mean, it's like there isn't any other, like, what other profession does this? I mean, like, except for maybe, I don't know, people like door-to-door salesperson, like, more aren't too many things that, like, would say, oh yeah, I'm not gonna pay you for that. It's like most other professions, like, you're gonna get benefits, you're gonna get overtime, right? Where's the I mean, do people get paid overtime there in architecture? No, because you're like
No,
salary and they're just gonna put it in. And then that also sets people up to think that you should be able to pay a certain amount of money. And it's like, no, like, that is crazy. And you're driving people, to work harder to make up for the fee that you didn't charge appropriately for, because you're like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna use these people, not pay them, and then that's how we're going to get that project. But it's like, meanwhile, it's not feasible, right?
this is kind of where that whole TV show was hashed, because it was 2007, 2008 when we went to just, the Great Recession, and a
Uh-huh.
lot of architects, I think it was a third, lost their jobs. And
Hmm.
so, I was reading a lot then, and I also lost my job. So, reading a lot about kind of what was
Yeah, a lot of
happening,
people
and
did.
I
Yeah, my
really
late
thought,
ex-husband lost his job. Yeah.
yeah, no, I thought that what a lot of it was, the issue is that people didn't really recognize the value of architects. And so that's why I hatched that idea of trying to have a show, and then every episode would be somebody had a problem meaning a
Mhm.
kind of a assignment, and then the
Yeah.
architect, through kind of his or her work and the team's work, it was always collaborative, would come up with a solution. Then they would execute it, and then we'd go back and visit the building with the end users, and it was always, of course, the fantastic building. It's really made everything better. This hospital helps. It's a great hospital that I felt healthier. Whatever it was always like that. And so that was the idea of that show. That's really the serious kind of idea, what I was really trying
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
demonstrate. And then,
Yeah.
so after that was done, I started to do these houses in Florida. So in the bio, it's talked about these houses. I'm not really doing those anymore after COVID, but
Wow.
they were always the same. They were always the same profile. It was always somebody that was very well off, that wanted a second house in Florida that was modern, which was good, right? Initially, it was good. I thought, oh, this is great. I can really do really cool architecture on the water with a lot of glass and so forth and so on. And a lot of people, they all have budgets, but it's a second
Mhm.
house, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
but very quickly you realize that like, I don't really care about this person's sock drawer, and like all of their, it's not this is not why I wanted to do this, to
Yeah.
be kind of somebody's. I felt like kind of like a servant, like, draw this for me, and on this whim and that whim, and I I actually found it kind of distasteful in the end. And I know, like, the firms we just talked about, like Richard Meyer and firms like that, all his clients are like that. They're incredibly wealthy, and they charge obscene fees, and they don't care about the cost of construction. They don't really care. That just, and so they
Hmm.
operate at a very different level. And for me, I didn't really find that nourishing or interesting. I just thought it was
Hmm.
like, what am I doing here? Like, this person's really well off, and this is their third house, and and not that complaining. I mean, initially it was kind of fun, but then you kind of feel like, what am I? Is this what I was trying to do? This is what I wanted to do, and so that I kind of, out of COVID, I kind of stopped going down there, and then I actually, around here in Boston, I really got much more involved with housing, and actually affordable housing. And
Hmm.
it's much more challenging in terms of design, and trying to make something, honestly, very interesting. But at least
Yeah.
you kind of go home and you feel like, you feel a little bit better about like, your efforts and the battles that you have to, the everyday battles, which are, I don't mean, there's more, because I don't know, to get money from the government. Yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah.
issues, right? It's
Yeah.
much more
Yeah.
challenging,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
at least there is some. You feel like at least you're doing something a little bit more positive than building a guy's house on a golf course.
Yeah. And
That's
I
how
mean,
I. That's
that's
kind of
how
how
it
I feel.
was. Yeah, and that's how it was when I got out of school and I went to work for this woman who was doing, it's like she was doing the Metropolitan Community Church, and they had an AIDS memorial wall. And then next door to that, there was a Caring for Babies with AIDS home. And
Hmm.
then we were doing, the Community Corporation of Santa Monica. was just starting. And so we were doing like apartment additions and remodels. And like, Santa Monica Community Corporation was buying up a lot of these old places that had people living there with in rent control for years. And we were just doing remodels of apartments. So we'd go in and we'd have to measure this apartment that somebody had been living in for like 20 years. But it was an upgrade, it was like, it was improving people's living environments, and then
Hmm.
kind of these apartments that we were adding on to, so that, because there's not that many apartments that are 3 bedroom, that are 3 bedroom, 2 bath. And so then we were kind of recreating these, stair towers, like moving to, so that they could have a second floor also. So a lot of these things. And and I was the AIA Custom Residential Architects Network for
Hmm.
the local chapter, and then I was on the national one. And the marketing person, and it was nothing against them, right? But they would say, oh yeah, Michelle, we have this we have like um a question from like a big newspaper. I'm not going to name the newspapers or whatever. They want to know, and then they would like pose this question. And finally, one of the questions was like, oh yeah, do you have any have you designed any projects that have spaces for pets in them? And I was like, are you serious? Like, this is what, like, we have so many other issues that we should be working on. And I said, and I mean, yeah, I get it. And I said, but you know what? I said, here, I can tell you, I said, I think I worked on some project one time with an architect, and he was doing his own house, and he had a special like cat door. And I Googled it, and I literally found it. And I said, here, the article was written like 15 years ago. Like, why don't you just go to that, ask him or whatever about it, and like be done with it? And I said, and it's not that I don't like pets, I said, but I said, I just find it like amazing that like that's what we're talking about, like spaces for pets in people's houses. Like, it's like I said, I think that we should just be, working on other things besides like these special pet doors, or dog washing stations. When people don't wash their dogs anyway, they have like a groomer come, or they take the groomer, like they're not going to act, or they're paying like somebody that works for them to wash their dog or whatever. But I don't know. Yeah. Right, it's the new in the late 80s, early 90s, it was what we were working flower arranging rooms. That's what they were, and I'm
Hmm.
like, flower arranging rooms. I'm like, how many people are like like are they really, and then I think that parlayed, all those flower arranging rooms became like dog washing rooms, so it's
I think that
not
like,
that not that right. I mean, like, you know, when you have a big budget like that, like, yes, you can design a beautiful home, like, no doubt about it,
right.
but it's working with the smaller budgets, and like making, and then those are like more novel solutions. Of course, everybody wants to look at a beautiful house. You look at it, it's right, it's architecture porn, it's like everybody wants to look at it. It's exciting, it's pretty, it's
Yeah.
beautiful, but is it your reality? No, for most of us, it isn't. But
I mean, I tell the students that, I mean, they look at a magazine and they see a beautiful house on the mountain and it's got a lot of glass and the pool and all of this. And I said, it's actually not that hard. Maybe it's hard to make it, brilliant versus really nice, but making a really nice house with a lot of budget and a good site is not hard at all. I don't
yeah,
know if that sounds pretentious, but it's just not hard. If you have money, it's
yeah,
really not,
yeah,
it's not difficult. What's
yeah.
really difficult is when you don't have any money, and then we have the same budget everyone else because it's a affordable housing budget, and then someone does something pretty clever, and it might not be the biggest move, but it might be a couple of moves. You're like, huh, that's done pretty well. And
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
appreciate it because I know how hard it is. And then I say, hey, Mr. Architect over there, that's a really nice move. There's a couple of nice moves there. I respect that because I know
Mhm.
how hard it is. And so it's I think that there's in a way you need more talent to take less to make something nice.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's a harder
yeah.
task, and I don't think as a younger architect I could solve a lot of these problems that we have right now in these projects where they say we have no money. It's like, why don't we make it curved and have this? And it's like, we can't do that. Do you have another idea? Well, let's use this material that I found that's really neat. We can't do that. Can you use a basic material? It's something like that, and it's like, that we
Yeah.
have to find ways to, and you have to know have to know how to build it. You have to know the materials, you have to know the cost, you have to know the process in order to find any seams or what there can be any innovation. So I
Hmm.
really do respect and admire people that can do something special with less. And then I know that person when they have an opportunity can do something really good. You just know it. You just like, listen,
Yeah.
if
Yeah,
this woman has
exactly.
a nice site,
Yeah.
she's going to be able to do something incredible. So,
Yes.
so in
Yeah.
a way,
Yeah.
I think that's changed for me. And I would say, just to close on the affordable housing subject,
Uh-huh.
is that it doesn't happen often because I do housing for an agency and a developer and so forth and so on. But every
Yeah.
once in a
Yeah.
while, you are at the building checking something, and a homeowner comes in, a new homeowner. It's the first time they've ever had a home, and they say, "You're the architect," and there's a kind of a I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah," and they it's like, "Thank you for my home." I say, "Oh, you're
Yeah.
welcome,"
Yeah.
something like that, and that's
Yeah.
actually much more rewarding than getting the local Boston Design Award from like I don't care anymore. Like that one of my colleagues has said, "Hey, let's Stevens here. He's submitting. Let's give him like for
Yeah.
what? I get a piece of paper that says, "Hey, Stephen won an award," and I used to care about it. I don't care about it anymore. And
Uh-huh.
so anyway, I think that I guess we should just hang it up, huh? We just I don't care anymore about those things. I'm looking for different kinds of
I mean, the
satisfaction.
thing is, well, what I think the message is that architects can help you design a good space to live in and experience regardless of what your budget is. And I mean, I think that's like, I think some people think, oh, an architect is too expensive, or I like that. But no, I mean, we can work with anybody's budget. And even, it's like I was working on this,
Not everybody though, Michelle.
not everybody can afford an architect, or not everybody.
Not every
Oh,
architect can do what you just said. As we
oh,
explained, like if somebody, oh,
no,
you
no.
want something nice, it's going to need more money. It's like, nah, it doesn't have to. Let's look at
Yeah, yeah,
what we
yeah,
really want here. What you really
yeah.
want here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was somebody that I spoke to recently, and they like talked again about a project, and I was like, "Oh, what about that project?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, it's over budget." And I'm like, "Oh, it's over budget." And I'm like thinking, like, I think all of the projects that they've done have been over budget. Like, are you building anything, or is just everything over budget?
Mhm.
Because like then, like, what are you doing? It's like you have to work. I mean, it's not like, I mean, you know you have to have that in mind. And I mean, that's the reason why and I don't know whether you do this also, but after schematic design and like maybe part of design development, I get preliminary estimates from contractors to see where we are. And then
Yeah.
even if a
Yeah.
client thinks that, oh my gosh, yeah, I want all this, and it's like, okay, and even if they're thinking like, oh yeah, well, this contractor told me I could do it for this much. It's always 250,000. I think it's always 250,000. Oh yeah, they said I could do that for
Mhm.
250,000. I'm like, oh really? What, 250,000? It's always 250,000. But then you can kind of see. So even before you move in to construction documents, DD and construction
Yeah.
documents, you can like then pare back and like, okay, like let's do it this way. Even if because a lot of times like clients won't even give you their budget because they think that you're going to charge
Right. Right.
based on how much. And I'm like, no, I said I charge like a fixed fee. Like I'll do a fixed fee, this scope of work. It's like we can do like different scopes of work for things. But yeah, at the first, if we just wanted to, but it's like we got to have something to base it on. Because even like square footage, or explaining to somebody like, okay, it's going to be this much per square foot. I said, but it's like, the square footage cost of a kitchen or a bathroom is going to be much higher than a bedroom. And I said, so, it's an average. So if you're just adding, these high cost spaces, it's like, yeah, then your budget is going to be, it's going to be higher per square foot than if you averaged it out for this. And so these are just things to like keep in mind. But I mean, I was even working on somebody this other podcast project that somebody was doing, and the person that was kind of in charge of the podcast wasn't an architect. And then they started talking about how, well, architects don't know how to control the budget. I'm like, are you really the person that's going to be in charge of this podcast? Like, you're like the last person that should be in charge of this podcast, because you're just like bad mouthing architects from the very get-go, and this is like, we're trying to get homeowners to to have architects do their because this is like rebuilding after the fire. And I mean, it's like, you don't want to come in like, oh, well, some people can't even afford an architect. I'm like, no, it's like, we can help there's like many different programs, there's many different things that architects were doing as far as like how much they were charging for people that were fire rebuild or whatever, or these these plans that they had like just for these different lots that you could purchase from them for like less than what it would be for like a custom home. But but it's like, you can't like sit there and immediately say like nobody can afford an architect. It's like, but yeah, I mean, you have to have you have to be under control. So with that,
who is this podcast for, Michelle? Who's your target audience?
my target audience, it's really, I think it's other architects. I mean,
Oh,
I would
okay.
love it. I would love it if homeowners would listen to it, but I don't think that a lot of times, like my friends that aren't architects, if they, my friends that are architects, they're like, oh yeah, they're all in. They like listening. But homeowners like, well, it's a little bit more. I mean, because really after 15 minutes, they're probably not going to listen. Like 15, like I don't think a homeowner is going to listen unless they have a real um, interest in like architects and architecture and kind of can get through. And I mean, we're not technically using ArchiSpeak, but kind of we are. But what your target for the show was, and then for your podcast also was homeowners, wasn't it?
Well, the not the show. The show was really just it was to really to kind of explain
Okay,
what architects
people
do.
that are, yeah,
But
yeah,
and that was public space architecture, so all those buildings could
yes.
be visited by the general public. So that's what that was the target. But for
Okay.
that podcast with my partner Doug Pat at the time,
Uh-huh.
he that was called Design Your Dream Home. So it really was meant for a homeowner. So that was
Mhm.
and we focused it that way. So we didn't really talk so much about um, well, you know, my education, or that we really kind of
Yeah,
looked at like,
yeah, yeah,
when,
yeah.
what's a site plan? Why is it important? And how, where, at what point do you bring a contractor on board, or how do you deal with the
Uh-huh.
fee? It was, I mean, that's the way we made it. I think it was okay. Some homeowners did listen, and we did get some feedback, so I think that was okay. I guess
Uh-huh.
if we had kept on going, maybe it could have gone somewhere, but I was getting very tired, very tired of providing this resource. But it was interesting.
Uh-huh.
Because I get to meet a lot of architects, but also contractors. We talked to different people. We didn't and interior designers. We talked to some engineer. We talked to a lot of different kinds of people. So
Yeah.
and then I met you. So I mean,
Mhm.
I think that sometimes, especially when you and I, sometimes we practice kind of in isolation a little bit. It is
Yeah.
nice to,
Yeah.
and then with Zoom and these kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
technologies, we're able to then meet people from very, very far away
Mhm.
and kind of develop and form a community, strengthen that community and those bonds. So I think that was very good. I probably should do something else again, because I don't want to go to AIA cocktail parties or, these kinds of things. I would rather, but in
Yeah.
any case, yeah.
But I mean, the cocktail parties aren't bad. I mean, it's like a
No,
chance to
cocktail
just kind
parties
of get out
with
there.
other architects.
Yeah,
No, why would I want to do that?
I know. Well, it's definitely not going to bring you work. I don't think. I don't think that. Yeah. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
entertainment. It's like everyone's going to
Some
complain about
architects,
how
some
we don't make any
architects are
money.
entertaining. Some of them are, I think. So what are your what three classic buildings do you like and why?
Is that question number two?
Yes.
Okay. I think we say classic, so I'm not sure classic,
Not
but
classical, not
but but
classical, like iconic.
but better
Yes.
known, better known. I mean,
Yes.
I told you
Yes.
I like
Yes.
houses,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
mean, you have to start with Frank Lloyd Wright,
Hmm.
and Falling Water, which has its problems now, but I mean, this is a kind of an important house to certainly for one to study.
Mhm.
I think,
Yeah.
the Villa Savoy by Le Corbusier is another great. So these are the masters, right? Frank
Huh.
Lloyd Wright, Le Corbusier, and then lastly,
Yeah.
I would put my favorite architect is Alvar Aalto. He's a Finnish architect, and Villa Maria.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's only,
Yes.
and I could only appreciate a building like that after knowing more about architecture because, Falling Water and then Villa Savoy, there's a certain didactic. It's easy to you can sort of see the lessons in those buildings that they're sort of more easily understood. Whereas Villa Maria, there's a bit more of art and kind of a difficulty in understanding some of the things that were happening there or that are happening there that I
Yeah.
don't think that young students in architecture can appreciate. So that took a little bit. That was a little bit later, but yeah. So those are really iconic houses that probably every architect that listens here knows and appreciates to some extent. Or I don't know if people love Frank. I don't necessarily love Frank Lloyd Wright, but I think that there are so many lessons in houses like that that I that I
Yeah.
appreciate.
He had such a
Yeah,
long career. I mean, if you have a long career and kind of like can kind of like see, so, it's like people, they'll say like, "Oh, I want a Frank Lloyd Wright inspired house," and I said, "From what period?"
right,
Right? It's
right.
like, I mean, it's,
But
you
what's
know,
so interesting about him is that people it's kind of like when someone sees a Picasso painting and they see something later on where he'll make a kind of a funny looking shape and he say I'm done and people think oh God I could do that and I say do you know that Picasso when he was young could draw and paint
oh
anything of
yeah,
any stuff and
yeah,
Frank Lloyd Wright when he was young he he was brilliant draftsman and designer he could do
mhm.
much more his classical design and
Yeah.
it's so
Louis
much more
Sullivan. He worked for
difficult.
Louis
Yeah,
Sullivan.
it's so much
Yeah.
more difficult to then push out on your own and find your own language. And maybe it looks simpler to do something like this. Maybe it looks simpler than maybe a classical inspired building. Uh,
Mhm.
but it's something that's on its own, where a lot of classical buildings, I mean, it's if someone asked me to design a house that looks like a traditional classical house, and I'm looking at precedents and things, it's not hard for me to copy. It's not difficult. What's difficult is
Yes.
to design something really new and fresh and that's of this time and taking advantage of the technology and all the addressing all the issues that we have going on. That's difficult. That's so
Yeah.
challenging,
Yeah. And
which
addressing
is
the site, right?
all of it, all the
Yeah.
things which make it unique make it difficult. But I think
Mm.
sometimes people look at, oh, it's just a box or it's just a simple painting. It's just a face. Um, but I think the really talented ones can do all the other stuff too. And now they're not satisfied in reproducing someone else's design. They want to
Yeah.
forge out on their own and find their own expression and try to address kind of the other all the other problems which are going on. To me, it's kind of ridiculous when someone and they don't call me anymore, but they say, "Hey, can you design a house that looks like it was done in the 1800s?" And they drive up in their Tesla and they have the newest clothes and so forth and so on. They want it to be wired for this and that. Oh, it's got to be passive house standard. It has to, I want it to be what on and on and on. I think, do you not see a problem with this request? No, I mean, but this is New England, right? This is what, people when they've made it, they want a house that looks like it's old. Everything else can be new, but not their house. The house has to look like it's been old. And so
Yeah.
I don't they don't
Yeah.
call me anymore. I'm not trying to be difficult, but I
Oh,
just say I don't think this is going to really work because you're asking me basically to design a new car that's a hybrid, that's really modern, that's super fast, has a great engine, that does all these things, but you want it to look like a model Ford. Or you want it to look like an old Buick with like fake wood on the outside. You want it to look old when it's not old at all. It's fake. And
yeah.
so
Yeah.
this is why I don't have, this is why I don't do big houses on, Rhode Island on the cliffs and you know, have a Porsche. So
Did you ever? I have a blog that was I think when I was doing the hashtag architects blog, it was called the prompt was architects in real life. And my thing was like basically like what it was like in a movie with an architect and then what it's like in reality. And so it was kind of like going back and forth. It's like and in the movie, and with cars, I said every architect in the movies has like a Porsche. I said in reality, I'm driving like my old Volvo station wagon.
that's good though. I think a Volvo station wagon, that's a representative car. That's cool.
think it is too.
Yeah,
What are they? What it was like? Oh, they're boxy and
boxy and
safe,
white. I don't
right?
know, maybe not white.
Didn't Steve Martin say that in L.A. Stories or something? It's
Yeah,
like boxy and safe or something like that. Um.
European,
So what?
European, right?
Yeah, I guess it's European. It's very Scandinavian. I like studied for a year in Denmark, so I would say it was like very Scandinavian. But so what do you like about being an architect?
Well, as you've from this podcast, as you've learned, not very much, right? It's fantasize
It's a
about doing other
Friday
things.
afternoon, right? It's a Friday afternoon.
Friday,
Yeah.
and yeah, this morning I got beaten up a lot. So yeah, definitely, it's definitely a tough day because it's late where I am, and the East Coast.
Oh yeah. No, I'm
I
like
think it.
yeah.
So there's been a lot of chapters, right, through as we both doing it for a long time. You know, I do think of small moments, and like for example, when I taught, every once in a while, there's a student that really wants to learn something that's willing to work very, very hard and really appreciates and is willing to go down, paths and you see the kind of growth of their work and what they see.
Uh,
That's very satisfying. That feels
uh-huh.
really good. That's just the same as teaching my kid how to ride a bike. It feel good. You feel good, like wow, I've sort of helped that person in motion. They kind of get the idea, and now they're going and they're getting better. And that's kind of really that's very satisfying. In terms of that's architecture education, maybe, but I
Uh,
told you the little story about the affordable housing, the one person that says thank you, and I said, oh,
hmm,
you're welcome. It's like this is my
yeah.
first house, and oh,
Yeah.
that's great. It's like, oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, you're welcome. I don't know. That's a unexpected feeling that feels pretty good. And I think
Hmm.
there's been moments of a house because you design a lot of houses, and I've done
Hmm.
less recently where the house isn't necessarily doesn't have to be the most expensive and fantastic with like lap pools on the roof and all that kind of stuff. But maybe that there's like a study or a space where, someone's going to spend a lot of time and it's just the either the view or the sun's going to be there and it just warms the space in a certain way. There's a couple of moves there that you figured out that are appreciated later that they say, you know what, I didn't understand that, but I really love being in that space. It's like the sun comes in at this time. I'm doing my work in there and I look outside, I can see why you focus the view that way.
Uh,
It makes me feel great. And it's like, oh,
yeah.
you're welcome. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's very
Yeah.
satisfying. So that doesn't happen a lot. Maybe it's because I have not done a lot of good designs recently, but I think I think
I
that
don't think that is it.
those are good moments. I think those are good moments. I think
I think that there is this right. It's a very intimate process, and then it's of
can be.
course it ends up, yeah, it's emotional, right? It's like people are like, right. So it's like they're trying to get, and then around here, there's really not, there's a scarcity of housing, like not only for people that don't make that much money, like kind of affordable, but even for people that have money, there just isn't that much there just isn't the housing is not out there, and
Hmm.
so like, when people have to, if we're doing an addition remodel and then we're like, okay, are you guys going to stay in the house, are you going to move out of the house, a lot of people are like, oh well, I don't know, it's like we want to stay in the area but we can't find anything, and it's like we have to find something that maybe we'll live like in like Airbnb or whatever, like this short-term housing for maybe 3 months of the time, but like, oh, can we get it? Can we get it done with it? Which of course, things always take longer, and then it's more rent, and then they're out of their house, or and so there are all those things. So I think that kind of when they actually want to move in for out here, it's just like people are like, so they're in such a hurry to just get back into the house and like live their life. I think that it doesn't really, it's like all those emotions, and that of course the costs of everything, and the stresses of it. I think that for a while they just need to kind of like move into the house and then realize how much they like it, right?
Hmm.
One of my one of my clients was like laughing. She said, Michelle, I still haven't like used that shower yet, right? Because they're like his and her showers. She's still using the shower. I'm like, why aren't you using your shower? She's like, oh, I just don't want to like, I don't want to like get it dirty or something like that. Or was like, I was like, okay, whatever, you know. But and then also I think so much of the person, they have to realize that a lot of their personality is in that house. I mean, people will say like, oh, it's like your projects look different. I said, well, they're different clients, and so much of their personality is in the thing. I mean, they chose the finishes for this, it's like, yeah, I said, is it more, I mean, I have like so much going on in my house that I tend to like keep it more kind of sedate with like sedate colors and stuff because we've got like so much stuff going on. But it's like, for other people, like they want more color. They want, kind of more, kind of activity or like bright colors or I like, calming colors because I'm in here, but maybe I'll wear something that might be, but or there's like some flash of something or like some art or something that's kind of more, that's different or something. But yeah, so I think that's kind of like there has to be that. But then after you talk to them about it, you're kind of like, oh, hey, do you, what, are you enjoying, the house? Or I talked to one for I had an interview up the street from another project that I was doing, and the person I was interviewing with said, oh, well, the people down in the corner, they're like working on their house now. And I said, oh wow, because the permit was like 2 years ago and I hadn't heard anything from them. And then I emailed them and I said, hey, I'm glad to see that you're like working on the house. And they're like, oh yeah, unfortunately, like we're not doing that house. We're just replacing the water heater because the water heater broke. And so we've had to like redo this stuff. He goes, but we really wish that we could do the addition, but they had some, they didn't have the work that they thought they were going to have. And so they can't do the addition. So it was nice to hear that they do still want to do the house, because I thought they were like really excited about doing it, and it's just that they just don't have the money to do anything right now. So
Let me tell you one anecdote about about this subject. My first house in Sarasota, it was a very nice couple, older couple, um, and the woman was really interested, really liked design, and so she and I to be pretty friendly, and we spent a lot of time really trying to make this special house for them. Initially, there was an existing house. After some study, I said, "Well, it sounds like you really want to start over again because, basically, we would have spent a lot of time just, I don't know why we would do that." And so she said, "Okay, let's do that." So we took the house down and really made kind of her dream house, and it had a lot of really unique kind of things going on. And I think it turned out pretty well. I think it was a really nice design. And basically, like, I think, and then we did furniture and light, everything. So after they moved in for a couple of weeks, and somebody else drove up and saw the house and said they really liked the house, and they offered to buy it. And I said, well, that's great, that's great, like a compliment. That's a compliment. And
yeah,
and
yeah.
her husband said, yeah, we'll sell it if you pay this much. And the guy said, okay. And they sold the house. They basically didn't move into their house. And all these things that we worked on together, I said, what about this room and that this was for your son and this is for your older daughter, this and that, this is where this was going to happen and that was going to happen. She's like, yeah, but look at all this money. And I said, okay. I mean, I found it really, really kind of depressing. Like I designed the house for you. I
I
just
know, Steve, but I mean, you just have to know that sometimes, I mean, I know that we worked on this one project for Erica Glazier. I mean, I'll just use her name, and she's giving all this money right now for the synagogue that I think Rem Koolhaas is doing in LA. So anyway, when she was 35 years old, she was divorced from this. She had been married to this Israeli architect, and he was a total modernist. And they had this modern house that he designed and built in the Palisades. And she had 2 kids with them, and she got divorced. And then she came to Mark Appleton and Ralph Mitchell and said, I want to do this traditional looking house in the mountains in Telluride, and so it was basically like this huge vacation house, this huge ski resort kind of, with big, and we did all this work on it, I mean, and it was all hand drafted, and so we were just like constantly, and the windows, there were these Zellick windows from New York that's not in business there, but there were like all these like custom windows, and they had to be super thick, and all of the paving outside had heaters to like melt the snow, and it just like all the details were immaculate. I was just doing like tile details on the thing forever, working all this stuff out. She chose like all of these, she had this big William Cody poster that she purchased, and it was an Architectural Digest. And then she built a barn, and then she sold it. She was there for maybe a couple of years, and then it was in Architectural Digest for sale. And
At
we
least a
were all
couple of
like,
years.
oh my gosh, it was within 5 years. It was within 5 years.
I had a month. They were in my house for a month.
I don't know, Steven. I mean, that is like, but I mean, really, like, how much time did she spend in that, right? It was like a vacation home. So it was
Mm,
literally just like, oh, okay, so it was just kind of another project. And then she actually moved into her dad's house at one point, which she had said that she never wanted to move into that house. It was kind of like this old Spanish style house, like Spanish colonial. And she's like, oh yeah, I would never want to live in that house. And then, she moved in there like 20 years later or something. So I don't know. I mean, it is, what I think is kind of bizarre is that somebody would, I mean, like the people, like I had this one house, I did it for a couple, the wife passed away, and then the husband was in it for a couple more years, and then these people said like, oh yeah, he put it on the market because he was going to move to Colorado, and then these people, they went by and they said like, yeah, they're like, we want everything, like we want to buy everything, we even want to buy the art collection. And I don't think they realized like how valuable the art collection was. And I'm like, you're not going to sell them the art collection, are you? Because this is stuff that you and your wife like had collected over the years. I mean, they've known each other since high school, and so, and he's like, no, I'm not going to give them the art collection, but they did buy it with all the furniture and everything, like the furniture, the light fixtures, like everything, and I thought that was like kind of bizarre that like, wow, I mean, now, I met with them probably 6 months to a year ago, and they're like talking about how they would like to change some stuff in the house, and I said, well, yeah, but I mean, the reason why the house is so small is that you really can't. And then they were saying, well, maybe if we buy a house next door, and I'm like, well, yeah, you can buy the house next door, but then, you have to combine the lots, or you can just have another house over there. And then, right, you can like walk back and forth over the properties, like just don't put a fence up. Um, so yeah, so even though they had bought this house because they said it was everything that they wanted, after they were in it for 2 years, they were like, oh, you know what, I think we want to change this about it, or we want to change that about it, so it's it's like maybe some people just, right, they're more they don't put as much value on the whole process, and right, it's like an expendable, right, it's like a new car.
hmm
It's like, oh yeah, I really want this car. Oh, you know what? I don't want this car anymore. I'm going to trade it in for this other car. I mean, you'd like to think that there's more, maybe a personal investment, but it's like, I'm just trying to come. It's right. That's the reason why they hire us. They hire the empaths so that we can design them these spaces that are.
Do I sound like an empath to you after
What?
this conversation? Do I sound like an empath to you?
Uh, oh yeah, no, you definitely are. Of
Oh, okay.
course, we all are. I mean, we all are. Otherwise, we would get this sensitive about this stuff. We would just be like, yeah, I don't care. Been there, done that, move on. Right? It's like,
Maybe I should try that next time when I say, Why don't we use mahogany?" And they'll say, no, we're really thinking this. And I'll start to cry. I'll just cry until they change, until they, okay, okay, we'll do the wood you want. I'll try
what?
it.
I wonder if that would work. Do you think that would work?
It might if I could try it. I'll try it. I'll just try
I
it
think
next
I'm
week
going to
as
try
a,
it
as a,
too.
as a, well, but you don't want to do it because, the woman thing. For me, it would be more
Yes,
impactful.
exactly.
It would be more
Exactly.
impactful if a grown man started crying on this job site because I didn't get the tile the way I wanted. I bet it would work. I'd be like, okay, okay, my God, the guy, jeez. So anyway, whatever it takes, right?
Whatever it takes, whatever it takes. So
Michelle,
what would you like?
I have to get on another call.
Oh, I
We've
know, I know, I
we've
know.
gone
Yeah,
past
yeah.
our
So what,
time a little bit.
okay, what would you like to say about the future of architecture? Just one
Just
or
one
two
sentence
sentences.
about the future of
Yeah.
architecture.
Yes. Yes.
It's it's it because you know that I don't know, because I taught a lot. I'm very worried because a lot of these schools are not addressing the problems that we see.
Yeah.
There's a lot of identity politics. There's a lot of, um, you know, how can I say it? I mean, it's really about what the student wants to do and how we feel or she feels about something. And I'm not articulating it very well, but there's so many issues that could be addressed that you need the talent and the energy of young people to help solve. And that's not where the energy's going. Like you think, oh, what, like you think that if you ask somebody like what do they do in architecture school? Like, are you dealing with climate resiliency, new materials, and trying to deal with
Conceptual.
energy? Are you trying to
Yeah.
do like
Conceptual
no,
thought.
no,
Yeah.
they're not.
No,
They're
no,
not
I
dealing
mean,
with
that's what
any
I
of those things.
realized.
They're not doing
Yeah.
any of those things. They're talking about, the things that are not architecture. It's like that there's so much applause for like a student that, hey, this is a housing project. It's like, this instead of doing the housing project, I've decided to really think about clouds and it's like that's really interesting, but what about it's
Really?
like, yeah, but I don't want to be limited by this thinking about what housing is, and I really want to rethink and be more conceptual about it. And I say, that's why I left one school that I didn't mention, but I just left the school. I mean, I finished the semester, but I said I'm in the wrong place because yeah, the students here, and it was not just it was all the students because the culture of the school was that, we're all super original, super creative, and we really shouldn't look at history. We should be really focus on our own ideas, our own thoughts, our own visions. And maybe one in a million of us is going to become Frank the Right, but I don't really think any of them will be. I mean, I really think that there was something that people are coming out and being and unfortunately not really learning how to be an architect. I really think
Yeah.
there's so much
Yeah.
about their own creative pursuits, their own personality, their identity. And I think that it felt like kind of like art school more than architecture school. And so I said, that housing, you need to have at least you need two sets of stairs. Like, oh my God, I don't want to get bogged down by that kind of stuff. I say, I'm sorry, I'm an architect. What else do you want me to ask you then? Do you want me to, should we talk more about the cotton clouds? I mean,
The cloud that we're
so,
living under.
but
So what is
I'm not making
identity
that up.
politics?
That's a real
No, no,
example of
no.
a student
No, I can
was
totally,
explaining
I can
something to
totally
me,
believe it.
that
Yeah.
was explaining something
But
to
I
me. And
mean,
I said, I really, and then they said, oh, you're too tough a teacher. And I said, okay, I'm sorry, but you're a senior and next year, I guess you want to go work for this firm and that firm.
oh my
And
God.
really, I think if anyone even
Yeah.
hired you because they thought you could draw well, let's say, and have potential, they would say, I really don't think you can do anything in our office, maybe except maybe put trees on the model or something, because you're just so far removed from what we need as a
From
practice of
reality.
architecture. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can do something else maybe. I don't know, but so that my future of architecture is that I really wish that the focus and the focus would really be on some of the problems. And unfortunately it's not as fun in school to focus on problems. It's really fun to just do your own kind of process and your own, cloud buildings and be very conceptual. That's really fun, but it's a shock when they graduate and they realize that this is, like, did you learn anything? Did you learn how you can help us in this office to solve these problems? No, and it's for the vast majority of this, and I've been associated with so many schools, it's moving
Uh-huh.
away from solving problems and much more into more about your own personal, you know, design
So is that what
process.
you mean by identity politics? What exactly do you mean by identity politics? And I'm sorry if I'm not.
I grew up a young, an Asian person. There was maybe an out of space for me, and so maybe I can explore the semester, Asian space, and I don't something like this, and I'm probably belittling it, but I'm just that, or I'm,
Yeah.
I grew up gay, and there
Oh,
wasn't
yes,
a space
yes,
for
yes,
me,
in
and I want
gay
to do this
space.
thesis
Yeah,
about that,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
and that's of
And
course
I'm a
encouraged,
woman,
and
and I'm a woman, so I would want
yeah,
like a
so
woman
so there's a lot
space
of
or
this kind of
something.
thing,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think that there can be some of that for
Instead of
sure, and that
saying,
can be
I need a
interesting.
door to get outside, I need a bathroom, it's like, that's probably, yeah, yeah.
And again, maybe we're of a generation where this, we can't really, I can't. I mean, I tried for a little while, but as I was at schools and it was beginning to change so much, and now if I go to school and I look on the walls and I don't see floor plans, I see, strange things. I say, I don't know how I can help. I don't know why you invited me to this review. Like I mean, I'm very boring, but
Steven.
I wanted to see a site plan, and is there a floor plan or is there anything? It's like, oh, well, this is more conceptual. I'm like, okay, so I don't really know what to say. I don't think I can really help anybody here. I should just leave. Thank you for the
Oh.
coffee. So anyway, that's my answer. I
All
have no
right.
hope.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you
Michelle.
so
Good to
much
see
for,
you.
yeah, good to see you also. Yeah,
Okay. Take
thanks.
care.